Okay, first item on our agenda, beyond invocations, item 3, projected revenues, which, I'm very anxious to see, and it has Donna Wood and Z Lamb. Who is going first? Z Lamb.
I was introducing Donna Wood. Let me start off and then she can come in and give you the details.
Must be Monday morning.
You have a one-page summary of last year's revenues versus this year's.
Which page we're looking at?
This one.
Lamb? Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
At the moment, our percentages for like ad valorem taxes are 97.5, same as last year, even though we're up around 98.5. We could easily go to 98 or 98.25 if need be.
Could I suggest we stay at 97.5?
That's where we're staying right now.
Okay.
And if we need it to, if y'all
Right,
want
I
to
understand.
lower the fund balance appropriated, we're gonna have to find it somewhere.
I just don't think you're gonna be able to sustain that collection rate.
I do.
Okay.
But
That was your challenge.
my plan is to keep it at 97.5 unless we need to do something more.
Don't we all agree that he won't be able to keep that collection rate at that number?
Why do you think that?
Go ahead, sir.
We're gonna raise it again this year. Of course, ad valorem tax, recommendation is based on 67 cents. And we've got a few other increases she'll go over with you. The one big one is investment earnings. Because of low interest rates, we've been really hit in recent years, but those rates are going up. Our commercial paper rates have gone up, so we think we can budget a little bit more there. But I'm gonna let Donna go through this spreadsheet. I know there's been some interest in the revenues, and they look pretty good. Of course, we don't have the we don't have some revenues we've had in the past, but go ahead, Donna, if you want to summarize them.
So I think you've already started with the ad valorem taxes.
Mm-hmm.
And as Z said, we're currently using a 97.5% collection rate with a 1.4% estimated increase in our tax base. That's actually a conservative figure on our collections, and especially with our motor vehicles. When we get our base for our motor vehicles, we're using 8 months in February, and so we're trying to annualize that base, which is, again, a difficult number to figure out, but there is some more some room in there. As I indicated, it's a conservative number for revenue. Sales tax.
Ms. Wood, right
Yes.
there, if we don't have population growth, what makes that continued increase? The economy allows people to buy newer cars? Is that what we're looking at?
That's mainly it.
I mean,
Your people are replacing newer cars with older cars all the time, and
Opposite what you said.
huh?
Opposite what you said.
I'm sorry, replacing older cars with newer cars with
Okay.
higher tax base.
Right.
We're looking this year to have like 5.9 after 12 months, maybe even 6 million. But our budget estimate based on 97.5 is around 5.3, 5.4. So we've got some room there, but you know, I like doing the 97.5 because when we appropriate from fund balance, when those increased revenues come in, it offsets
Right.
the fund balance.
Well, during the time, say, 3 years ago, 4 years ago, did we not notice that people won't buy new cars? Does
that's
that not-
pretty, there wasn't a lot of growth in our motor vehicles. And also our system has changed how we do our motor vehicle collections as well.
Yeah.
So that's actually done through the state, through the
Right.
DMV. So it's a whole different system that we use.
So you
There,
really
there
don't-
was stagnation.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
There's a lot of used cars on the market now, and I see them pushing those faster than they're pushing
Right.
the new ones. And the Ford Motor Company said they're gonna concentrate on SUVs and trucks.
I'm gonna keep 2 sedans, I believe it
Yeah,
said.
that's where their biggest sale is.
That's where that profit margin is.
I would say the increase comes from two factors: replacing old vehicles with new ones, and the ever-increasing cost of new vehicles.
Gotcha.
And that's your tax.
That's a given fact there for sure.
The sales tax increase, the way that we budget, or the way that we budgeted the recommended for sales tax is based on what we anticipate collecting in the current year, and we did the same thing for last year. So we're looking at about a 6% increase over what we budgeted for last year. And that's based on an annualized numbers from July through February. In addition, I did a similar calculation where I took the collections from July through February and then the collections from last fiscal year, from March through June, with no increases at all. And the number, still about a 6% increase over last year's budget.
How long has it been since we've seen that kind of increase? 6%, that seems pretty healthy to me.
It's
Well, last year's, the original budget, the budget for this year, again, we were not knowing what's gonna happen with, sales tax. Again, that's a conservative number, so I think last year it may have been a 4% increase.
It was last year, I looked at that this morning.
Right, so it's just, but we're looking at over what we budgeted for last year.
in some counties, larger counties particularly, they get an estimate of what the increase is gonna be next year, and they add that to what they've done, doing this year.
Right.
We're just going with what we're doing this year.
Okay.
So last year, there might have been projected a 4 or 5% increase, but we didn't budget that 4 or 5% increase.
The other taxes, this is primarily an increase in projected property excise tax collections, and that's on a historical, and it's really just $29,000, but a 9% increase. And I'm doing a historical analysis on that number, and that's where the increase came from.
And what is that? I think I know.
That's with our Register of Deeds.
Register of Deeds, okay.
Yes. Again, the unrestricted intergovernmental, the way that we budgeted the video programming collections with our public education grant funds, there will be about an 8% increase. It was just the way that it was budgeted last year, so about $24,000 more in that line item. With restricted Department of Social Services, that revenue actually is decreasing, and that's because this year we're not having to budget for childcare. Last year in the original budget, we budgeted $508,305 in childcare, but in the current year, what's offsetting that full decrease is increase in Medicaid funding of $194,345, and that's in transportation and administrative and some other assistance programs, and then also a justice grant. And the majority of that is actually in salaries. So the revenue is coming in, but it's offset, but the expenditure associated with that revenue is more personnel related.
What's causing that decrease in childcare?
The state is actually taking over that program.
We used to be a pass-through for child care subsidy, and they started trying to change that about 2 years ago, and it took them until
But we had 5 months.
yeah, we did 2 months this year in the budget, but then we had to add 3 more months, I believe, before NC Fast actually was implemented.
5 months we had this year. Bill.
Right. It's usually about $2.5 million, and now that we don't have that anymore passing through. We still administratively certify eligibility, but we don't, the money's not
So
coming
we have
through
to
us.
use staff to.
We still have to use staff to review the applications and things, but the money goes straight from the state to the vendors.
Okay.
So in effect, you got about a $260,000 increase in that line item when you set that to the side, that part of it.
Right.
Okay.
So the next item, the decrease in the state other, our gang and drug task force grant. is-
Health, what about health? Not much change there.
Oh, I'm sorry. The increase is primarily due to an increase in projected, the WIC funding. Restricted state other, that's really a decrease due to the gang and drug task force grant ending and an offset. So it's not a full 60,000. There's an offset with their school resource officer funding increase. And that's a expenditure associated, so it's a direct expenditure and a direct revenue with the school resource officers, how we budget the school resource officers.
Back up to health before you get too far. What we're looking at for home health, we just project it going forward for another year, and then we'll do a budget adjustment depending on what the outcome of that is.
Right.
Okay,
We have it in the budget
right,
as if we will continue to do it
gotcha, okay,
until y'all vote otherwise.
okay, thank you.
For restricted other, that's where we have our debt service with our lottery funds. There are no changes in what we anticipate getting from the lottery funds to pay for debt service for Rocky Mount High School. I didn't put an explanation with the restricted federal health, but that would primarily be increases from federal grant funding for our health department, our health programs.
Are you just giving that number, or you just,
No, I just didn't, I just missed putting in an explanation there.
right, but to get that 1.25% increase, is that a number you come up with or a number they give you?
They gave us that
They gave
number.
you that number.
They work directly with, the, the federal granting agencies and see what's available. The increase in restricted local, last year when we did the original budget, we didn't know that we were receiving the $150,000 for the Nash Healthcare Community Paramedic Service, so it wasn't budgeted in the original budget. This year, we're anticipating receiving that same $150,000, so it's included. I have it included this year, and so that's the primary reason for that increase in restricted local.
Have we talked to them? Is that something, I know we anticipate it, but do we expect that to happen?
Yes.
Okay.
They've indicated it.
Okay.
I don't believe the foundation has actually done it yet, but
Okay.
I believe it's being recommended.
Right.
Okay.
I spoke with Brian Brantley, and he can't say definitely, but he feels very confident that we're gonna receive that same funding.
Okay.
The permits and fees, the increase is primarily due to projections for registered deeds, fees, collections, building permits, and building permits based on historical analysis. Again, just looking at how we've collected over the past few years and what our collection percentages and dollars look like, that's an anticipated increase, and it's primarily in those areas.
And we did not budget an increase for building permits based on the $180,000 single permit we got for a solar farm.
how do you answer a question before it's asked, sir?
Smart.
He is smart. We spend that money on trucks anyway, do we?
Yeah. But we're not expecting that to reoccur.
Right.
We hope it does.
Yep.
Okay, in sales and services, the increase is primarily due to the increase in projections for the EMS and Medicaid cost settlement funding, court processing fees, misdemeanor and jail fee collections, and these are based on, again, historical analysis, taking collections over the past few years and seeing where, what the numbers have looked like. The investment earnings, our interest rates at one point were below 1%. Now we're looking at about 1.2%, and hopefully by the end of the year, 1.5%. Sounds really low, but it's actually looking a lot better than it has in the past.
You're talking about the cash management
That's
trust?
cash management trust.
What's the commercial paper at?
Commercial paper is around 2.25.
Yeah, and we've got, what, 30 million in commercial paper, so.
Our other revenues, we're budgeting estimates for insurance proceeds. In the past, we really haven't budgeted.
20 million in commercial pay?
It's around 30.
I said 30, but I meant,
It's-
is it around
it's
30?
actually 30.
Is it? Okay. Sorry.
There's a difference there.
Yeah.
And, let's see, and the transfers from other funds. Last year, we budgeted, for the, transfer for controlled substance to pay back the general fund for the purchase of the narcotics building. And this year, they actually paid it completely off.
I know.
And so there's
Heard.
no transfer of funds there. And going down to the general fund appropriation, last year we budgeted, we had 1.8 million from the general fund, sort of operational appropriations. Right now, the way that our current expenditure recommended budget looks, we would need an additional 432,472.
And for historical purposes, not hysterical, but historical purposes, we were at 2.8 until we backed off the last 2 years because of revow and the uncertainty there. So we feel that that figure is okay at this point, especially with our conservative estimates on those other revenues.
So that number comes from what the board has approved thus far.
That's right. As of right now.
I mean, as far as expenditures.
Yes.
Right. So right now, if you look at the very bottom under the total, the increase over last year's original budget is 2,900,229. That's where we are. So it's really about a little over a 3% increase over last year's budget. And so,
What?
3%.
about
3%,
3%
okay. I
increase
thought you
over
said
last
6.
year's budget. And to balance it, we have the capital appropriations. The health reserve appropriations actually provided by the health department. They have reserve funds that they can use, and this is the increase over last year is actually provided by the health department when they provide their budget numbers.
About 2 million of that increase is the 3% COLA and all the new positions that y'all approved at the budget meeting, plus increase in
About how, what, say that again?
about 2 million. 1.9 million of it is the COLA, the new positions, the increase in health insurance, which isn't bad, but about 5%.
Right, and our retiree health insurance, because they are in the marketplace, because with us being in the state plan,
So
we have to.
2/3 of the increase is related to personnel.
Can you go back up to restricted state other
Mhm.
and elaborate a little bit on this SRO funding increase from the state?
Well, actually, the SRO funding increase, we have the officers that we get reimbursed for.
Mhm.
That is kept in a separate, we actually bill the school for that piece of it, and they reimburse us for that. So whatever we have budgeted for SROs, that comes back. And so there's an increase with cost of living or uniforms or whoever they have.
So
in
it's
those-
just, it's nothing, no increase in the number or anything?
Right,
No,
exactly.
Gotcha.
the way they do that is the sheriff's office prepares a budget. They give it to the school system. They sign an MOU every year with that amount in to reimburse us for the SROs that we're providing.
I got you.
There's no change in number of SROs currently.
Did we determine yet whether that was just high school principals or high school and middle?
I have not
Okay.
found
Just
that
let us
out
know
yet.
that.
How much is that, 300 and some?
I believe it's around 350,000.
Yeah, that's right,
Something like
350.
that.
And we got one per high school?
And that's 3 in the high schools that we do. No, we only do 2 high schools because
We only do 2.
Central is in.
Central is in Rocky
Yeah,
Mount.
so
It
it's.
must be both.
they're at least reimbursing us for it.
Right,
Whether they get it from the state
Okay.
sends it to the school
I
system.
got you.
So-
That was the
I think
question, whether the state paid
Yeah.
for junior high.
I
We'll
believe
find
the
out.
state's.
Yeah, it
So-
wasn't whether we
I'm
get
thinking
paid. I
it's
know we did.
5 resource officers, but I can verify that.
But Rocky Mount reimburses for those that are within their city
Senior high
limits.
and Nash Central.
And middle,
The school system reimburses
how about
Rocky
the two
Mountain.
middle schools?
They
Well, actually, there's 3, Parker,
Right.
Rocky Mount Middle, and Edwards.
Yeah.
They're all in the city.
The school system would reimburse.
And then you've got 2 high schools, so are they funding 5? Okay.
And they have a similar agreement with the school system, and the school
Okay.
system reimburses.
Okay.
Don, if you were to take the increase in the budget of 2.9 million, what is the total increase in the revenue?
The increase in the revenue, let me ask that question again.
This list, do you have a total of increase in revenues that you have listed here?
$2,050,000.
Is that less?
That's just revenues.
Yeah, is that less the decreases in revenue?
Yes.
Okay.
All right,
So net change is I see,
2
total
million.
revenue.
Yeah.
I got you, okay. I see it. So we're about $850,000 more
From fund balance.
from fund balance. That is the same number, I guess, is right. I'm thinking out loud. Got you. That's where it's gotta come from.
Or either get more aggressive with our revenues. And that's pretty much a summary of revenues.
Well, it's better than it has been in a number of years. Projected increase.
Yeah, I think the economy is moving in the right direction. All indications are that you got more building permits, got more land sales through excise stamps. Tax base is increasing, sales tax is increasing. Things seem to be on the upswing.
Back on SROs just for a moment. Down here with Nash Central Middle, is that school within the corporate limits of Nashville? I mean, that's a question I'd asked before. And if so,
Yes.
are they participating?
No, not that I'm aware of.
I believe that would be the only other middle or high school within the boundaries of a town or a city.
Right. In some counties, the
No.
cities
Have
don't.
they changed it? If not, they went around Nash Central
Didn't
and,
they?
and,
Well, I don't
and
know.
extend those other areas out there.
I don't know.
I'm not sure it is.
I believe
It
it's only.
once wasn't.
It's probably on the Rocky Mountain one, because we have several other middle schools in a municipality.
So we,
Go into that.
The small municipalities.
Red Oak schools are in Red Oak, but
That's
yeah, I
true.
know
Yeah,
that.
Red Oak.
that's true.
The small municipalities don't participate, and in some counties, the municipalities don't participate at all. That whether the school is in the city, the major city in the county or not, the county provides the SRO service. For some reason here, Rocky Mount also provides.
I guess what I was trying to say, and I didn't say it well, was that other than Nash Central, if it's in the corporate limits of Nashville, it would probably be the only other school within a town or a city that is getting anything other than sales tax. Red Oak gets sales tax.
Sales tax and power bill funds.
Yeah. Okay. I guess there's no interest in
Nashville.
looking at that going down the road. Because SROs is gonna become a big issue at some point.
Yeah, they are.
Okay.
So you got a 2% increase in revenue and a 3% increase in expenses, which is where $800,000 comes from, in simple terms.
What'd you say you had over what we've already budgeted, 800,000? now?
Um,
Have you got anything?
on expenditures?
Yeah. We've got so much that we've already kinda,
Yeah, everything, all the numbers we've got right now is after the work session.
yeah.
Yeah, they're using the 2.9 million increase.
Yeah,
Other than personnel, it's about a million.
right.
I guess, do we have any revenue to work with?
Well, you got 2% revenue increase and 3% expense increase.
Okay.
So you're pulling that extra percentage is the addition of the fund balance over last year.
Okay.
Exactly.
3% and 2% revenue.
Right.
But we're comfortable with that fund balance appropriated because of our conservative revenue estimates and because for years, we were at 2.8. The first 2 years I was here, we were at 2.8 in general fund balance appropriation, ignoring the health and the capital, and we never touched it. So we feel good that y'all have some room there to go up from the 1.8 of last year.
How much did the fund balance increase last year? Or
It went down $1 million last year because we were concerned about rebound numbers. Yeah, we actually.
No, the appropriation.
Right.
Yeah, it went-
Oh,
I mean, the
in the
actual
budget,
fund balance. how
what
much
we
did it
actually spent.
increase from last
What
year
was
to
the
this year?
fund balance change in our audit? I think it went up.
Yeah, that's what I was
We
thinking.
did
It
increase our fund balance.
It went up.
I thought you were asking what the budgeted amount was last year.
The last 2 years, we budgeted for general fund balance appropriation 1.8 each of the last 2 years. Prior to that, we were at 2.8. But we were afraid we were gonna lose so much value on revow, and we didn't wanna change the tax rate. So we were trying to ease into a decreased fund, tax base, which we realized about a 1.5 decrease in tax base, but growth has pretty much compensated for that.
Well, you got enough things on the table in the coming year to decrease it significantly.
Yeah,
Take care of
the
it.
internet will
Yeah.
cause
That's
that.
one item.
And on,
Where we at though, just to make sure the board understands, and correct me, Donna or Z if I'm wrong, but the numbers we're looking at here is where we are of what we approved at our budget session over in Rocky Mount. So if we look at what we got pending, we may not have anything pending, but we got the school request, which we haven't, we're still level funding. And then we've got, of course, the request from the sheriff's department, which we left at a certain point.
which is that request?
The sheriff's department. I mean, we had additional requests that we did not approve.
Oh, yeah.
And numerous other additional requests that we didn't approve.
Right.
So it just gets us, and really the only one we haven't taken a actual position on yet is the request we got from the school system and the community college, and I think the community college we seem to be in good shape, and I guess
Yeah, we're good.
we're looking at here is, in these expense numbers, is what they actually requested when we met with them last week.
Right.
Right, because at the time, when we had our budget retreat, at the end of March, we had the community colleges numbers, and so.
Sure.
the
They're
board-
already in here.
They're already in that
Okay.
number.
Yeah,
We didn't have the school, Nash Rocky Mountain School System at the time, so. we
Right,
didn't-
right.
Okay.
The Rocky Mount school system, I mean, the Nash Rocky Mountain school system is, we've got right now the same amount as last year.
Okay.
And the Gateway Partnership is the only other issue that y'all wanted us to come back
Okay.
with information. And we have that at last year's level right now. And
Well, item-
besides those two,
Yeah. Item 3, do we have any more questions on revenue from any board member? Seeing none, we'll go to item 4, discussion on the 2 items there, which, as Mr. Lamb said, the partnership and the 2 educational entities,
yeah,
Carolina Gateway Partnership.
what happened there was at the budgets retreat, we got a request.
You got something? He's looking at it.
Oh, yeah, everybody, you got this. The second page is new analysis they did with the new reval and population numbers, estimated numbers. But what they originally requested was 330, and we had question about, was that based on a formula? And I said, it's probably based on rounding. And so I asked them to go back and update it, using the formula that had been established. And when they used that formula, they said they came up with 333,000 compared to 317 last year. But as this email from Mr. Tolson says that, instead of doing a 4.8% increase, that they just rounded it to 330, which was a 3.8% increase, about 3,000 under the formula. And so that's where we are, if there's any questions.
My question would be if we funded it at the same rate that we did last year under the adjusted formula, what is the number?
317, oh, are you talking about what amount did we budget last year?
Well, if we take the three, last year they asked for an increase, which we did not do. If we take that same number and adjusted it to the formula, what would the number be?
333.
No.
No, I think their overall request last year was 719,253. So if we took the 0.4482% for Nash County, I think that's what you're asking. 320,211.
Is that mislabeled 1718 request, or is that the actual?
That's actual. We budgeted 317,717 last year.
But they asked for more?
That's what they asked for. It
Yeah.
increased from the year before, 309.
The only thing we get, yeah, that's right.
You're right, the increase was year before last, but last year we gave them the same thing.
Right.
And gave them a line of credit.
Right. If we give them the same thing again this year, but adjusted to the new formula reval numbers for the two counties, as well as Rocky Mountain, where does that put us at?
I think the 322.11 she give you is
Well, that's what
right
I'm
instead of
trying.
317.
That's what I'm trying to get to.
Yeah.
So is it 322?
320,000.
200.
Where do you get that?
I took the total amount of their request is 719,253, and multiplied it by the 4.482%.
This figure. Times 44.
And that would be 320,211.
And they're requesting
330.
330.
I guess they are. It looks here that
331.
331.
Yeah.
But that's not what his email said on Friday.
Well, that's what the reason I'm a little bit
Yeah,
confused,
I'm
because his
confused.
email don't match the chart, the way I look at it.
Well, if you look, and they actually submitted, what I've attached is their request, and it has what we funded in the past few years. So amount funded in 17, we funded 309,453. Last year, 317,717. And this year, they're requesting the 330.
Pleasure to the board. Mr. Combs, you look like you have a comment, sir. Do you have
No.
one? Okay, all right. Look, sir, this evening.
330 is what they're requesting, the increase of,
As an officer of the board,
what, $13,000?
Basically $13,000 above level funding adjusted to the
I was
formula.
using this percent right here.
Yeah.
Lisa, you keeping up with something? You look
Say that
like-
again, cause I'm getting.
Okay, what they're asking for is a $13,000 increase above what we currently fund them, adjusted to the new formula.
Above what the formula is?
Above what the formula is, if we kept our appropriation the same as last year.
$13,000.
In other words, most entities, nonprofits, we have done level funding for. If we would do level funding for this, but we should each year adjust it to the formula, because the formula's always
Right.
moving
Right.
around. They're asking for $13,000 more than what that number would be.
More than the formula,
Yes.
okay.
And overall, for
I'm cool
all
with
the
sticking with the formula.
entities, they're asking for 24,000.
Correct.
more.
Yeah.
So what would the formula give them, 322 this year?
320,211.
320.
I say
That's
give,
what I say, we give them.
we're not talking about that, it's 13,000.
Everybody wants a little bit. If you give everybody more than they should be getting based on the logic that you establish for funding, then, you know, we'll have a problem. I mean, I think we should stick to the formula.
That's
I-
right. The
I don't-
320 is the
I don't really,
formula.
I question the formula anyway.
If you go with the formula, the 320 is, 320
Go
to
to the
11 is the
formula
right figure.
and give them level funding.
Exactly.
Right.
You got to say both parts of
That's
that.
right, that's what I agree with that.
It's $320,211. I'm trying to stay neutral simply because I serve as officer of the board, so.
Well, I do too. I mean, I'm not an officer, but I'm
Right,
on the
you're on the
board.
executive committee as well as Mr. Bellfield, but, I mean, all of us can't stay neutral. And I'm not the treasurer, I'm the secretary.
I just don't know where you start wavering away from your logic. I mean, you gotta kind of stay true to it.
I'm good with
Right.
sticking with the formula. Good. 320.
I make a
The formula.
motion, I make a motion that we stick to the formula and go to $320,211. If y'all don't like that, you can keep it. I think that's a good place to start.
All right, there's a second to that motion.
Second.
Second, anybody have any questions on the motion?
What was that?
Yeah, well, the
320
formula.
what?
320 to 11.
211, okay.
And what that is keep them level funding adjusted to the, index that we use to calculate the cost between the three entities involved. Actually, well, three entities is in the formula.
My question
Yes,
is,
sir.
what is the formula now?
Well, the formula is, shown on that second,
44.8?
44.82 is our share.
is our share.
And that increased. What's being proposed is that instead of going to the 743 figure or the 742 figure, we keep the 719 figure, but we adjust it to the increased share that Nash County is responsible for under the formula. So that goes to $320,211.
And I would suggest in that motion that we include the language
What they're
that
putting in.
providing funding by the other two entities remains level.
And that, we got that, Mr. Belfield, by going 719,253 times the 44.4482.
The board should understand our part has increased some from prior years because our reval numbers were better than either Rocky Mounts or Edgecombe, even though they were all a decrease. Our decrease was less than the other two entities. So therefore, our prorated share has creeped up somewhat.
Well, 320,000, that's still a slight increase.
It's an increase only because the formula driven increase. Yes, sir. It is.
That's all we can.
Yes, sir. I have a motion on the floor. The other questions on that motion? Mr. Bellfield, you okay? Are you ready for the vote?
211.
Yeah.
Okay. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed by like sign? Motion carries. Mr. Lamb?
Okay, next matter is the request that y'all received at the joint meeting last week from the school system. I'll answer any questions that I can. We gave you the PowerPoint.
Well, let's actually take action on the community college, so we have it for a minute, so if you explain
okay.
what we're doing there.
Okay, community college, they, I met with the president. He presented to y'all the other night a 2.2 million in current expense and a 400,000 request for capital. That includes phase one of their security upgrades. I think I've said that Wesleyan did a 2 or 3 year upgrade. The school system, y'all provided funding, $400,000 a year for 3 years for them to do security upgrades. So they are now looking to enhance security at the community college. They proposed a 2-year phase-in. We have talked about, in the event they get a quote that saves them money by doing it all at one time, that I would bring back to y'all during the budget year, a request for a budget amendment. But at this time, their request is 2.2 for current, 400 for the capital.
And the current would be, that's $104,815 over last year's operating, and for capital, $125,000 over last year's.
Any questions on that?
But actually, the capital, if you take away the security upgrades, they're asking for 25,000 less than they did last year.
Any objection to it? Do I'm just going, no objection? I'd say go ahead.
Okay. And again, leaves us with the Rocky Mount school funding request. We were anticipating about 132,000, and it ended up being $1,396,000. No, I'm sorry, that's the capital outlay. What was that figure?
It's $1,380,979. It's on the last page of the last page of the printout.
PowerPoint.
Yeah, I see it. 1,000,000.
PowerPoint, sorry.
Can't recall that number.
$1,245,979. No, that includes, oh, wait, you're right. Oh, yeah, and plus the 135,
So the total was one,
yeah,
three.
total is,
That includes the 135.
yeah, the 1,380,000
Yeah, it
includes us holding the state harmless.
Is there a staff recommendation? Or you just want to open up for discussion?
I'd open it up for discussion. This is one of those items that I think the commissioners address each year. I can tell you that I don't think we can fund that entire request, 1,380,000. It just knocks a hole in our budget, and
I don't think we can do the entire thing, but I would like to see us do something.
and I'll open it up
Just for
discussion.
point of information, the general statute that we work under about current expenditures staying level, is it tied to the given year we did this, or does it increase, make that active for the following years?
The way I remember it being written was that the base year was the year we were in at that time, and it's not, the base does not change.
Okay.
It's the original base year.
Y'all understand that?
Is that the way you remember that? Yeah.
The
Okay.
maintenance of effort, is that what you're referring to?
Under the agreement, under the
Right.
law.
Statute,
Right,
we had a
right.
baseline that we could not go under. My question was, does that baseline move if we increase it?
No.
Which we've been cautious to do before.
The statute actually designated the baseline as
As a given year.
the 16-17 year, I think it was.
Ms. Wells made the comment that she realizes we cannot fund the total amount, but she would like to see us do something. Other comments or ideas from commissioners?
Question,
Mr. Combs?
well, last year, did we we didn't do a increase in teacher subsidies? Did we kinda talk about that we might do it this year?
What we've done historically, Mr. Gomes, prior to your time on the board, I won't say how many years ago, but we made an agreement with the school system when we were at 6%. That the following year, we would both, put in 8% to move from 6 to 8. And then for the next 2 years, we put in 0.5% each to get us to 10. So our supplement now is 10%. Last year, we did not do any adjustment in that 10%.
Right, that's what I remember.
Yes, sir. Bill, you look
Well-
like you were gonna say something.
Yeah, I came prepared today to not fund that total amount, but, at least $300,000.
Do you have a method for the 300,000 or
Well,
that
I'm looking
arbitrary
at,
number?
one part of it is the $135,000 that they have requested for.
So that includes the 135,000?
It does.
Okay. Okay, all right, other comments?
That would be 1.5%.
Okay.
Wasn't there some information or comments made about the local, number of local positions or classroom teachers that we would kind of base that number on?
My fault, Ms. Barnes, has been all along that we would take the 135,000 and address it independently. With the
Yeah.
whole harmless thing.
Mhm.
Yeah.
But then, I think, my own thought itself is that we should find out truly what the supplement increase would be based on the increase that the state is gonna give the teachers. And we certainly would need to fund that increase of supplement because we have somewhat obligated ourselves, or this board, to fund a 10% supplement. So we've got an obligation there. I don't know what that number is. I've done some math with what numbers I've got available, and I know about what the number is. But I'm sure Mr. Outlaw is a lot closer to the number than I am possibly. But that is one way to look at it as a baseline of what we have really previously obligated ourselves to do.
Review with
Did
me
I make-
what that 135,000 was about.
If you recall, they've said that because of something that the state did in a statute change or an appropriation change, that they are now having difficulties getting a principal to move from a teacher's position once that teacher position reaches a certain level to a principal, because the teacher can make more than the principal, so therefore they're trying to make that whole. My thought on that is they did not prove the case. That's just my own, in fact, they almost worked against the case, is my thought on it when I saw the numbers, but that's just my thought. Do you want to take that item up first and then move to the next one? Just to keep us moving?
But you were saying that the $135,000 be off to itself.
I'd like to, it's two completely separate items, so I'd like to, let's deal with that one first, just to keep us moving. So how does the full board feel, once you saw what the principals were making, what was being paid out of local appropriations for principal salaries beyond what the state is paying principals? How do we feel about the need for us to make whole harmless what they're asking for? it's a complicated issue, granted, but I think Mr.
But
Outlaw
we
was probably
still
explaining.
dealing with what they requested, 135,000.
Well, that's all, for that item, yes,
For
sir.
that item.
That's all we're looking at, yes, sir.
Okay.
Can I just make some comments?
Sure, but I'd like for all board members to make comments on that one specific item.
Well, I've got some other comments as well, but I can take them at whatever
Well,
order
let's
we're
take
doing.
them, let's dispose of that item first,
But
then move to the next. one.
this is probably rehashing information that myself, Mr. Belfield, and you did in the committee meetings with the school system.
Yes, sir.
But I think it's important for this full board to understand this 135,000.
Absolutely.
And so, in helping the full board understand that, I think it's important to talk about where we've come from. If you go back and from the first meeting we had, they requested this 135,000,
This is committee meeting.
this committee meeting.
Right.
And we were given a slide presentation that showed a supplemental pay for principals at 7.5% to 9.5%. And I've got that with me if anyone wants to see it.
I'll validate that number, Mr.
They showed us those slides comparing Nash Rocky Mount to other systems. And the comment was made that there were maybe one, maybe two, I believe you would verify that as well, principals with a higher rate than the highest rate of 9.5%.
Or they actually said two. Yes.
Okay, I said one, maybe two,
Yeah.
okay. In looking at, from that meeting, we requested to be provided with a listing of the 28 principals in the system, as well as the 43 assistant principals. And I'm not dealing with assistant principals now, I'm just talking about principals.
Without names.
That's right. There's no names. They gave us no names. We requested they not give us names, just give us numbers and list them. And what they gave us for the 28 principals on that list, there were 5 of those principals at 30% plus supplemental pay. 1 up into 38+% range.
Right.
There were 4 at 20% plus. There were 8 at 10% plus. There were only 11 of the 28 that were from 7.5% to 9.5%. If you take the total monthly salary for all 28 principals, it totals to almost $163,000 per month. If you do a calculation on that, you divide it by the principals, then that averages out to a supplemental rate, if it were equal across the board for all 28, to 16.5%, which I believe Mr. Belfield mentioned in the meeting, one of the subsequent meetings we had. So we can't correct what's been done in the past, but if it had been done probably a little better initially, then you could have a spread supplemental increase across those 28 principals of 16.5%, which would by far be better than surrounding counties, or at least equal to. 13 of those 28 principals, if you look at that scale, their total monthly salary is not listed on the state salary schedule. 13 of 28. So
You mean it exceeds.
if you go look at the state salary schedule, and this is information that's available to anybody that wants to pull it up and look at it, it gives you a population, and it gives you whether you have met growth or exceeded growth or no growth. And all that determines your salary schedule. 13 of 28 are not even on that state salary schedule.
Is that meaning that they're above the state?
It means that their salary schedule is different than what the state will pay, so somebody's paying that. You read into that.
What local appropriation is paying.
Well, that's kind of my point.
Okay, okay.
But also in looking at these principles, and I really, my wife says, hey, you know, don't talk a lot of numbers because you spend a lot of time in it and it's sometimes clear to me and sometimes not. But this is the state salary schedule for principals. And if you go back to the information that was given us for principals and you look at those 28 principals, then it's pretty easy to determine that probably the 4 high school principals are getting a pretty significant supplemental pay.
Well, we think it's 38%, 22%, 37%, and 31%.
And again, I based that on, and I looked at the pay, and I found the pay on the scale, and then that drove me down to an ADM and whether or not they were meeting growth or no growth, et cetera. So it's all listed here, and I could take the time to go over it with you, but I won't. But 4 high school principals are for sure, probably, if the population is correct. I don't believe we have any schools other than high schools that have 1,000 or 700 to 1,000 kids. There may be. Do you know of any? Can anybody?
We have, an elementary school.
No, I'm talking high school.
No, we do, that's correct. Yes, sir.
Well, anyway, 3 of these high school principals were placed at those schools with the current administration. One of those high school principals was placed at the school during the interim superintendent's time here, Dr. Twyford. So I'm just assuming, I don't know, you have to make a lot of assumptions when you look at this because this budget is very difficult to track, but you would have to assume that that might be the individual that was moved from the central office to a high school and his salary was just maintained at whatever it was at the central office. There was really no reduction. So in looking at this current budget, unless I missed it, I find about $90-some thousand in here for this supplemental increase. I find another 34,000 listed under classroom teachers, program 001. Classroom teachers, local funding, it says salary held harmless for teachers. I don't know what that means, but it's $34,245. Then there's, under central office administration, there's school administration held harmless, $7,185. I mean, that's not a lot of money, but go ahead.
Yeah, I think the teachers is, assuming in the biennium budget that the teachers are gonna get a raise that are state funded. I think what they're saying is to maintain that level of funding for the non-state funded teachers would cost that much money.
Okay,
I
maybe.
think that's what it is.
Maybe. But the point being that the information we were given does not really support the request that they have made. Classroom teachers, Z, since you mentioned it, and I don't want to vary off topic here, but if you go into program 001, and again, you could spend a lot of time in this budget, but if you go into 001, they're requesting $716,909 for 15 classroom teachers, local money. That local funding would then be an average of $47,794, say $48,000 rounded up per teacher. If you go on the state salary schedule to average that kind of money, and that's without supplement or benefits, then you have got to be a 17-year teacher. So they allocate teachers by position, not funding. The state average varies from district to district because districts have different levels of funding. So they allocate positions to Nash Rocky Mount. So if you are funding locally, why would you not put your highest paid teachers on the state funding? And why would you not fund your lesser costly teachers locally? So you could have 15 teachers at 5 years experience, and I believe with the turnover, they have probably got that, and that would reduce that number by $150,000. And there's other things in here that tell me that maybe they have opportunities, unless I'm just totally misunderstanding it, that they haven't taken advantage of. And I'm just very leery to budget, to give them additional funding, particularly understanding that we've got a school system that has many needs. For example, Williford School. We've got, the latest information I have says that we've got 4 schools that are graded at F. One of those schools is Williford. They have a program in the school system where they train what they call NELAs to be principals. And it's the Northeast Leadership, I've got that information in here, but they train these people to be principals. They've got 7 in the system. If you've got 4 schools that are Fs, and that's a resource that's available to you, I would think that, wouldn't you think they would want to use those resources where they have the greatest need? There's no NELA at Williford. There is a NELA at Wave, Winston Avenue, and that is not even a testing school. It's a K2. It's not even a testing school, so they have no grade. You've got 5 mentors in the system. Again, it's not a lot of money, but it's money. You've got 5 mentors in the system that actually mentor principals, $54,000. And I'm not saying they don't need it, but you've got 5 people and their job is to mentor principals. Now,
They, home office expenses, or they work out of the home office, I guess?
I don't know where they work out of, Robbie. There's 5 of them. They're locally funded. They were $50,000 last year. I didn't see it last year. I didn't pick up on it, but it's 50. They increased it to 54 this year. And I know right now at Edwards today, one of those mentors is going into the school because the principal is transferring to Nash Central Middle, because the principal at Nash Central Middle is transferring to be the Assistant Director of Transportation in the central office. And so that mentor is going into that school, Edwards, and unless I'm mistaken, they've got about a month left in school, and they've got 3 assistants over there. So I'm not questioning whether they need it or not, but you are surrounded in the school system with administration that should be providing those services without having to fund those 5 additional people. And not only that, we've got, in this system, we've got 43 assistant principals. And I'm not saying they don't need it, but I'm saying if you compare that to other systems, if you go look at Edgecombe, they have got 14 schools, 14 principals, 14 assistant principals. Wilson has got the same ratio. They have got 1 principal and 1 assistant principal per school. Nash Rocky Mountain has got 1 principal and almost 1.6 principals per school.
Assistant principal.
That's right, assistant principals. So we've got 28 schools with 43 principals. I don't know where these NELA people, these 7 people that they're using in the system are funded. I don't know if they're state funded, it's through North Carolina State University. Are they state funded? Is it matching? I have no idea. But there's just a lot of information in there that, for me anyway, makes it very clear that there's some opportunity. So with that said, then I don't think we as a board should support giving funding for something that the state has determined across the state, not just Nash Rocky Mount. They have determined a funding formula for these schools, these principals, and what we're doing is we are overriding what the state has put in place. And we are in essence rewarding our system for not having high performance. I mean, that's just the way I see it. Maybe I'm wrong, but that's kind of the way I see it. So I don't think we should fund that money. And I do think that we are obligated and should do everything in our power to support our classroom teachers, everything we can. And if they get an increase from the state, which I believe they've got 5% or so dialed in here for these teachers, and I don't think they're gonna get that. I think they're probably gonna get 2 to 3, based on some discussions that we've had with individuals. But, so whatever they get, if it's 3 or 5, whatever, I think we should support those teachers with the needed supplemental pay, whatever that amount is. I don't know what that amount is. Do we know how much that is?
We won't know yet because the state hasn't pushed that down yet.
But would we know, we could calculate that pretty easily on 3% or?
Well, the other night, I think Senator Horner did make the comment of what you just said, it would be 2 to 3%. So I think he would probably be closest to it to know what it would be. So that's in the range it would be. Anything else, Mr. Outlaw?
No, again, that's the little bit of time I had to look at it. That's,
And somewhere in your searching information, you find anywhere what the state recommend based on the population of the school for assistant principals?
the state allocates positions to the school systems. And what you've got, if you just look at comparable systems around us, I guess the question is Nash Rocky Mount performing that much better, if any at all, than Wilson County? I think the answer to that is probably not. And if so, what is the justification for assistant principals averaging 1 per school to take that up to 1.6, or go from 28 or 29 to 43? That's money that can be used for other things that are needed.
But it seemed like to me that the state would have, so as I was listening to your presentation there, and running several things through my mind, that the state may have, this may not be a recommendation as to, based on the population of your school, what's your allocation, what the allocation would be for assistant principals?
The state is probably, and I haven't looked into that detail, but the state is probably going to make an allocation of a principal, of an assistant principal, probably based on the population at the school.
Yeah, I would think that.
But to use this as an example, and I'm not trying to pick on any school, but would you think that in some areas, if you had an elementary school with 200 or less kids, that you would necessarily need an assistant principal? It's nice to have it, you want it, but do you really need it?
Well, I guess it depends. I know some of these principals are in charge of discipline, some are in charge of transportation and seeing to it that the students arrive and as they're leaving, that everything is in order. That's one of them.
Well, they have those same responsibilities in every system, Mr. Bellfield.
Yeah, I know, but I was just saying that that's what some of them have, and I guess it might depend on where they're located to. I know, for example, like Riddle Middle School, I tell you, when the school turn out over there, because they have stoplights there, that helps them. But it can be chaos over there, with people getting off jobs and moving down the highway and schools turning out.
Well, that could be the case at any school.
Yeah, well,
Take
that's
a
what,
break.
that's what I'm My point I'm trying to bring out there is that different needs for different schools.
That would be true.
I've had a commissioner ask for a 5-minute break, so I will honor the request at this time, and we'll get back into this. Back to order at this time. What we're working on, just to refresh your memory, is trying to resolve this $135,000. Mr. Outlaw talked quite a bit about the $135,000 along with other things. Just to refresh the board's memory, or not necessarily memory, but just to restate what the Board of Commissioners' role is in the school system funding and operation. It is, we basically are charged with giving them as much money as we can do and fit in the budget with all the other requests. The operational things, we really are very, very limited on what we can do. We have an elected school board that handles how they spend the money, where it goes to, et cetera, et cetera. So our role is really to allot funds and something that keeps us comfortable. But in allotting funds, we definitely got to look at what has been done with the county's funds. And I think that's what we're charged with, not only what is the maximum amount we can give, but we gotta look at how it's been spent. And this request of the $135,000, which we separated and we need to deal with now, as I stated when I first brought it up, I just don't think they justified this case at all. In fact, in my opinion, what they gave us really hurt their cause. And to begin with, they gave us information that wasn't necessarily correct. I would even be kind and say it wasn't in totality what we needed. But when you got what we needed, it appeared like what we got to start with was not correct. But I'm not gonna make that as a statement. But we have, after reviewing the numbers, we have plenty of money in principal salaries to put us in real good shape on the state average if it were allotted in a different manner than what it's allotted. So at this point, we just need to decide whether we want to approve this $135,000 or whether we don't want to disapprove it. I started down this side and got to Mr. Outlaw. Ms. Richardson, you have any comment on this item, or Ms. Wells?
I don't know, $135,000, my concerns is gonna come later.
Okay, that's fine. Ms. Richardson?
I don't have a problem with it, but I know you said it, and we know it. We cannot tell them how to use the funds that we give them. That's the hang up we have, the problem I have with it.
Right.
Because, I really don't agree with how it's being used for principals. Now, they said it's gonna up the, adjust it to the teachers, classroom teachers or whatever.
Right.
I would totally agree with it 100%, but, since we don't have a say in how it's being used, I would hesitantly agree with the, 135.
All right,
I wish we would allow to have some say in it, but we don't.
right.
This is the principal and assistant principal.
Yeah.
Assistant principals and assistant principals.
Oh, okay.
Is what this is. So we now need to resolve it. I would do it as a consensus, which it doesn't look like I have, so I would entertain a motion to either approve or disapprove this.
Question, Mr. Davis.
Sure, I'm
Okay,
sorry.
it's just for the principals and assistants, so if we do not approve this 130, that would just eliminate the principal. It has nothing to do with the classroom
It
teacher.
has nothing to do with classroom teachers, but I mean, I know it's very complex,
Yeah,
but what they're asking for, and what disturbs me the most is I can forget all the numbers, I can forget all they've given us. But Mr. Outlaw briefly touched on the fact that what we would be doing is we would be approving funds to substitute something that the state has eliminated because our performance didn't hit a certain scale.
no.
And we sat there the other night, I think this is a very important point, and we asked them, whatever you do, if you don't give us unfunded mandates. We harp that every year. And basically what we would be doing if we were to approve these funds, we would be working the reverse of what we were actually asking them not to do. they have given the school system a mandate based on performance, and we would choose to fund it over top of what their desire was, which, if I was sitting up there in a senator or a representative seat, I would look at that as they're asking me in one hand not to do one thing, but yet they're willing to do it themselves. That's the real critical point. You can really forget all the numbers if you want to, but the numbers have another side to it. But with that said, I'd entertain a motion to approve or disapprove the $135,000 for principals and assistant principals.
I move we disapprove the
Have a
$135,000.
motion by Ms. Barnes, there a second to that motion?
Second.
Second by Mr. Combs. Is there any question on the motion? All in favor of the motion, let it be known by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed by like sign?
No.
Okay, that's a 6-1 vote. All right, the next item, on the agenda was the other part of that, actually, it's the request of the $1.3 million or
1.245979.
increase in local funding from the county to the school system. And I'll just open that item up. And so we've dealt with that one item. Now what we've got is a 1.279 request, which, Mr. Lamb, you had something very simple that told us what that money was gonna be used for. Would you review that
Yeah.
right quick for us?
On the detail they gave us, page 12, on the top of the page, this is where they talk about local funding. Just in that one first 8 lines there, page 12 yeah. If you add up 3 line items, you can see where the increase is coming from. Line item 2, 15 regular classroom teachers this year was 551,000. Those same 15 are expected to cost 716,909 next year, an increase of 165. Then line 3, they have teacher local supplements. That's the 10% provided to the classroom teachers. It's going from 2.884 million to 3.688 million, an increase of 803,000. So that's 165 plus 803. And then line 5, employers' benefit cost is going from 945 or 946,000 to 1.24 million, an increase of 294,000. So if you add up those 3 numbers, it's basically the amount of the increased request.
And the first item, the salary, it went again from 34.5 last year to an average of almost 48.
So those 15.
So if you adjusted that to where they're hiring new teachers, not 17-year and above teachers, then the 34, 35, 6, 7, 8 number makes sense. And then that number drives the supplemental number.
It appears that they're proposing to fund with local funds more experienced teachers rather than having the state fund them, to the tune 15 people, 165, that's $11,000 more per position.
Do you understand that?
Yes.
You understand why they would do that?
No, I understand, no, I understand
They
where they came
understand
up.
what you said.
Okay.
They're putting in those slots more experienced teachers. Now, like you said, it would seem that they would put in less experienced teachers and pay them locally because they can put those more expensive
Where
teachers.
they put them in here, it doesn't say what school you're putting them in.
Right.
What slot you're putting them in.
Right.
They're classroom teachers.
But if they shift, but instead of shifting the more experienced teachers to local funding, if they have those in the state budget, the state pays for them, no matter what their salary is.
I mean, that's just hurting them.
Yeah, so I'm not sure why they're,
You could take $48,000 if you want to use that number and budget that amount of money. Instead of 15 teachers, you could get actually more teachers locally.
it would appear to
Local
me
funding.
that nothing would prevent them from taking that 716 figure with those more experienced teachers and putting them back in the state funding stream and funding. at
Because the
local
state
level.
gives them positions.
Right. Now, the local teacher supplement going up 800,000. I'm not sure where,
Well, you just take that number, and that's a 30% increase.
Right.
It's almost like somebody has moved a decimal,
right.
is what it almost seems like. I mean, the first item, how many local funded position, teacher position did we have this current year? Wasn't it
50.
somewhere around 15 again?
15 both times.
15.
Both times. But it's a 30% increase in the request, and I just calculated, and the increase is almost identical, like they pulled a constant and applied it to the whole increase. There's just no rhyme or reason for where this money goes to. I mean, we're talking about a 3% increase possibly, which the supplement should go up equal amount, but yet they're asking for 30%.
Yep.
Well, the big problem as I see it, and I think I mentioned it to you, Commissioner, that finance department.
Be careful.
They need to be trained.
We don't need to go there.
Yeah, you're allowed to say what you want to, Mr. Bellfield. Go ahead, but I caution you, we
all
are in
I'm
a
saying,
public
I
meeting.
think I believe it would help so that both this Board of Commissioners as well as the school board would understand funding and budgeting
The
Right,
same way.
better.
yeah. So,
And I don't care who you are and how good you are, including myself. And I don't consider myself all that good, but I'm not bad.
Halfway, Fred.
You can always learn something, and you always ought to be in a position of professional improvement.
yes, sir.
And that's what I'm saying. And I think that it would improve the communication between the two boards.
Is there
If
any
that
way-
happened.
Mr. Cole?
Is there any way we would know what that figure would be if the state's gonna provide a 3% increase? What
Yes.
subsidy the subsidy
Well, it would be the
be
exact same percentage. It would be a constant.
3% of what?
It
What
would
is
be-
the subsidy amount now?
Well, it's 10%. If their salaries went up 3%, our supplement's gonna go up 3%,
So
because
we're
it's
going
always
from
gonna be a
10 to
constant.
13?
No,
No,
it would
no.
still
No,
be
no,
ten
3%
percent.
of whatever the
Right.
Salary.
based on the
Increase.
level.
Whatever the salary.
If the state increases for all teacher positions in our system, $2 million, then the increase for us, just with those increases for all the teachers, would be 10% of that $2 million, would be an increase of $200,000. Do you understand that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
Is that reason, I mean, is that? is
But
that
what
where
I'm
we-
saying is, when you look at these three numbers here, the three large numbers there, each one is exactly 30%.
Yeah, and that
And
don't,
each one should probably be 3%.
now that's what I'm getting to. Is that
Right.
reasonable for us, or
That's reasonable.
Well, that's what we got to decide here in a minute.
we'd be talking about how much money?
If what? If it was 3% instead of 30%?
Yeah, if it's 3%,
It would be 1/10 of that total.
Other, Ms. Wells?
I just, and this is, figures go over your heads and over your heads and everything, and I think it's very important that we look. My main concern has been, and still is, that we pay our teachers, and I know we can't tell them how to spend the money if we give it. And they know, and we know we're not gonna give them this much money. I mean, that's whistling Dixie if they thought we were. But my main concern is somewhere, and I talked to Donna, she said we can't tell them how to spend the money, we give it to them, but we can request. I would love to say if we make increase, our request is that the money go to the classroom teachers to teach the students, because we don't teach our students, we in bad problems, and the teachers are the ones that do it, not the assistant principals, not the superintendent, but the teachers in the classroom are teaching the students. If we're gonna support someone, we need to be supporting our teachers.
The only way you can do that is increase the supplement.
So if you
If that's
increase
what
this,
that takes, I mean, you know,
I-
my
Well, I
thing
will
is,
tell you, in our committee meetings that Mr. Belfield and Mr. Outlaw's staff have done, we have made it very clear to the school board that the appetite of this Board of Commissioners in any future increases needs to be directed towards supplement increases for classroom teachers. How many times we said that, Mr. Belfield? Numerous times.
Enough where you're supposed to, after saying it 3 times, it's supposed to stick.
Right, okay.
but that's it, I mean, what we as a board concerned about, and every one of us on here, is that little child that starts from kindergarten up through high school getting an education. And I have nothing wrong with the superintendent, I have nothing wrong with assistant superintendents and all these assistant principals. But that person in that classroom is the one that's teaching that child and molding that child's future. And that's the one that I really want to see supported.
Well, you, Wayne, and I had the privilege of, spending about 4 hours with one of them principals Saturday night, and that's who you're talking about.
That's
Is
right.
that principal there.
But I mean, the principals are good, but don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
But that person in that classroom is the one that, and that principal now will tell you they were in the classroom doing the molding.
But I'm gonna tell you, that leader of that school has great impact
put their name somewhere.
on what happens in that school and what they accomplish.
Yep.
But they're
Make
very
no,
important,
make
I'm not
no
saying they're not
mistake about it.
important.
But,
That's true.
but if you look back at this, I just think that for these locally funded teachers, I think we need to recommend to them that they budget these teachers as they did last year, looking at bringing in the least costly teachers into this local funding. And then I think we need to budget a supplemental increase for our classroom teachers only at 3%. And then if the state does better, then we can always come back and adjust to that.
Okay. I'm gonna ask you to put that in the form of a motion.
Or 3% if that's what whatever they budget.
Right,
I
but
think
we've got
we
to
should.
give the staff a number to be able to finish the budget process, but let me allow any other commissioner to give a point of view. Ms. Richardson or Ms. Barnes, we hadn't heard from you. Any comments you want to make?
I agree with what Commissioner Outlaw said. Y'all been in on these meetings, these committee meetings, so you have, I think, a better understanding of everything. And so I
And
what
Mr. Chair, I don't want to be misunderstood that I don't care about the principals. I do care because most of them came up through the classroom. I support them very, very much. But
I don't think
really
nobody
want-
took your remark to say that.
So that's what I
I'm
would
just
say.
saying they're both very important.
They're very important, but that person working under them with them children are important too.
Right. Ms. Lou?
Yep, I feel the same way, principals are good in their positions or whatever else, but the bottom line is, if they're a good principal, they're gonna take care of that classroom
That's right.
first.
Well, you need good people out there because I've experienced and seen where a top administrator of anything can limit those that's on the staff working under them by their shortcomings.
Yep.
And
we-
so,
I think
so
we-
you can't overlook it.
No, I think we certainly realized that this year, in our school.
Well,
And y'all sit in them meetings and we haven't, so y'all heard a whole lot that we haven't heard. Good, and we trust y'all for that. But I just think that, well, all of them are important.
Oh, they
That
are.
person that's teaching
They-
that
they
child
are
every day.
indeed. Ms. Wood, Mr. Outlaw give a thought of how he felt we should handle this. Is the way he stated that a calculatable item that you can deal with? Should we move forward in that direction? And what he said was, he would like to see us base the increase in local expenditure on a 3% raise in classroom teacher salaries, and whatever that supplement requirement was to keep our 10% constant.
I think I can, if I understand, it's based on these 15 teachers that fall under the local,
Well, now, this would be all
Current
teachers.
All teachers.
all teachers.
Yes. And I think that number, you're gonna have to extract it out of the school board, out of the school finance department, I think. Well, I'll ask Mr. Lamb, didn't mean to exclude you.
No.
Is that-
I'm trying to figure out,
I think in my mind, we're talking about somewhere between $130,000 and $160,000, but that's
That
a
would
very
be about-
limited knowledge of a school board budget that I base that on. That's just a number I came up with this morning, trying to extract what that classroom teacher cost at 3% would be.
and let me, just so y'all fully understand, I fully understand. That supplement increase, you know, when you look at 2.8 million supplement cost, and we've been told that each penny during the 3-year process we did was $550 per penny. And so you would think at 10%, we would be at 5.5 million. If you turn to page 2 of their,
Would you mind saying what you just said again? We were told that each penny, I mean, we know what that cost
The first
was, about
year-
$550,000.
the first year, and
Okay.
it went up each year. So say
Okay.
600 now, say 575. We've given them, the second 2 years, we gave them 300,000 for our half. But it might have been a plus or minus. I mean, we ended up.
Raise all teachers' salaries.
No, I'm saying the supplements, if it's 600,000 per percent, and you give them 10%, we should have 6 million in supplements.
Okay.
And what they did this year was, they took, on page 2,
6 million times.
2.2 million or 2.3 million from donations, grants, reimbursement revenue to pay their half, or, you know, to get it up to 600,000, or really up to 5 million, I mean, 5 million.
I think they've always done that.
And last year, they were appropriating 500 from fund balance. This year, they're not appropriating any from fund balance. So they're losing 770,000 from the donations, grants, and reimbursement revenue. And they're adding to this figure the 803 to make up that difference.
Well, Donna, if the
Dan, you want me to?
supplement we gave of 1% cost us $550,000, we use $575 now. Just so we don't run ourselves up a tree, what would that mean their salaries were? So we'll know what a 3% increase would be.
Can I get back to you on that number? I might have to work with the school.
Well, I'm just trying, I just kinda want to get a number in my head, what we're talking about, make sure I don't have a decimal in the wrong place.
Just make sure when you work with her that she understands what you're asking. You're talking about classroom teachers. You're not talking about clerical, administrative. You're not talking about anybody else, because all these people get supplements to some degree.
Did supplements go to everybody, or did it go to the classroom
I
teachers?
think it's about.
They go to a lot of people, not
690 plus
everybody.
15.
I think we should leave that like it is.
Unless you have an agreement, we had an agreement, a signed agreement, They were threatening a lawsuit. We did a signed agreement where we would each put in money for the increase in
And that's what we
supplement.
need, Colin needs.
So they were bound to it, but when you give them an appropriation in a regular budget cycle for current expense, we cannot control how they use that money.
That
Probably
supplement-
some oversight.
Supplement needs to be to the people that's getting supplements now, not just break
Some
out
over
supplements.
700 teachers.
Right, the teachers, yeah.
That's what I meant.
Now,
Classroom.
Yeah.
they can make a commitment to you, but unless you have a contractual, obligation, they're not bound by law. By law, they,
We need to do what's bound.
yeah. You give them a amount of money, right now it's $20,320,000 for current expense. And,
And the supplement's
And-
included in there.
yes, or about half of, it looks like about half of the supplement cost is included in what we give them. The other half comes from
So if we-
donations.
If we do the supplement
grants,
thing, and we're saying
fund
that
balance.
the supplement, unless we specify it goes to a certain group, which we cannot do, it goes to whoever's getting the supplement now.
It's, no, not necessarily. I mean, if you said we want to give them a 1% supplement increase, I believe, and which would be about 100% of that 1% would be about 575,000. I think if you publicly said that and they diverted it elsewhere, they'd hear about it from the
Okay.
teachers.
Right.
But they could still do that if they wanted to.
But they would kind of be shooting the gun.
They'd be
They were
shooting
kind
the
of like
foot.
putting the gun to their head.
Mhm.
I think if we approve this money, it should be approved with the understanding that we expect them to use it for classroom teacher supplements, supplemental pay. And then if they do what they do, that's up to them.
Well, they got to come back next year.
Based on what we did before for the 1%, which the way I did calculate this morning was different, but I just ran through it real quickly based on having that number of 575 as a current number for the 1% supplement, which I didn't have. But we're talking about an addition of about $165,000 is what we'd be talking about to match 3% teacher increase from the state and keep our supplement at 10%. Now, my real question, Z or Donna, is we, at that time, split supplement increase. Do we still split that number, or after the first year, does that become all of our cost?
The 3 years, it was half and half each, as you said, each of the 3
Sure.
years.
But in the budget we're in now, do they still put that 2% in that they were putting in from their funds and we put 2% in, or does it all become our responsibility moving forward?
They can take it from any source they want.
Okay, so-
If we gave them, if we gave them 180.
So we're
you said?
still giving them 8%, really and truly, and they're coming up with the other 2% somewhere else.
That's correct.
Donna?
I think I think they have adjusted over the years, and I think that money is being funded from what's being appropriated from the county.
Sure.
So that leveled it out.
Right.
And now we are where we are.
Right.
They're at 10%, that's in the budget.
Okay, okay.
So we're appropriating
I
an
think-
increase of 3% to their overall
That's what I thought,
classroom.
but I just needed to make sure.
Yeah, I
was right
think,
on that.
I think we are actually.
Last year, they appropriated 500 from fund balance, so that could be arguably money they were using for their share of the supplements. As
Well,
they
they-
phase out that fund balance appropriated, then he's right,
Yeah,
Yeah, it's gonna roll over
100%.
somewhere else.
Yeah,
I
it's
don't
gonna
think you
roll.
can expect them to pay it
Sure.
one year and then not
Oh,
pay it
yeah.
going
Okay,
forward.
okay.
The 100% was ours, we bought what, $320,000?
What's the question again?
If it was, instead of the 165, it'd be $330,000 if we paid.
I would say each,
If they didn't fund any and we had to do it all.
based on their original
Well, we're
number.
doing it all.
I know, I'm just asking.
Based on their original amount that they gave us 4 years ago of 550,000, being 1% of the supplement, and that increase in as teacher pay has increased, it's probably between 575 and 600 thousand per penny now. So if the state increases their salaries by 3%, then our supplement would increase not from 10 to 13.
Yeah, but I mean, it increase accordingly to the percentage points.
Right.
To just be safe, I think if we do what Mr. Outlaw suggested, we're talking about an expenditure of somewhere between $150,000 and $200,000. That's the range you're gonna be in. I feel very comfortable with that statement. Other comments on the
Yeah,
one?
1% would be 203,000? Or,
What you doing now?
1%.
I'm just telling you what 1% increase over the current year would be. It's basically the number, close to the number you said. Each would be 203,000. Right now, they're getting 20 million. They're getting $20,320,000. So each, to increase them 1% would be 200 and about
Oh,
200,000.
you're looking at something a whole different way.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, but they
About
seem-
200,000.
But they seem to want to base it on teacher supplements, not a percent of increase of total budget.
Right.
Okay. Any other comments? I'm ready to call for a motion if y'all are.
For, what, $200,000 for supplements?
Well, I'm gonna open the floor for a motion. I'm basing that on what Mr. Outlaw suggested, but the motion can be anything. I mean, I can't dictate the motion, I'm just gonna ask for the motion. Any other questions?
I put a motion on the floor.
All right, you want to put a motion on the floor?
Yeah, I
Okay.
put it on there.
What would be your motion?
My motion would be to fund them at $203,000 as county manager and see it would take care of it.
Well, just to make sure I understand it, so Mr. Belfield, after the discussion we had, you're not looking at it that way, you're choosing to give them a 1% increase in local expenditure. Okay.
Okay.
Does everybody understand this motion? Is there a second to that motion?
I need,
Okay, all right, I want to make sure we understand. We had a long discussion about teacher supplements and giving an increase based on teacher supplement. What Mr. Bellfield's motion says is that rather than do that, he's making a motion to give them a 1% increase in local funding from the county. Arbitrarily 1%. He's taking the $20 million and $20+ million and give them a 1% increase.
that has nothing to do
Now,
with.
please correct me if I'm wrong, but that's what I heard you say.
That has nothing to do
That
with
is,
supplements.
It does not. That's presented.
that's, you just give them that money. They can use it for for principal and assistant principal supplements. They can use it for anything they want.
I would not be
My
supportive
question-
of that motion.
No.
Well, I can't start discussion until I see if we get a second on the motion. Is there a second to that motion? Seeing none, that motion does not move forward. Is there an additional motion? Any other motion on local expenditures for the county?
I would hope that any motion we put on the floor for consideration would be directed to supplemental pay for classroom teachers based on whatever percentage of increase the state gives our classroom teachers.
Well, you state you would hope that. I'm looking at a motion.
Well, I would put that in the form of a motion.
I would
Okay.
second that.
All right, Mr. Outlaw, I'm gonna make sure, I'm gonna ask you to restate the motion.
I don't know if I can or not.
We need an
Based on
amount
the
for the
state.
budget.
We're gonna do that.
Okay.
I'll take care of that.
Well, you're gonna have to calculate the amount, but I think we should make an additional budget allocation to the Nash Rocky Mountain School System for supplemental pay for our classroom teachers only at an amount equivalent to the state salary increase that the state provides. If that's 3%, and we can use that as a starting number. I think we should have a number. And then if that is different going forward, then we can always have a budget amendment to adjust to it.
Based on a 3% salary increase, that'd be 180,000.
That's about right.
But that directs that we have an expectation that that money would go to the classroom teachers to support their salary.
And I'm just gonna make one little clarity of what Mr. Outlaw said, and what he's doing is, providing the money to keep the supplement at 10% for the increase in state funding for local classroom teachers only.
And that supplement, Mr. Chairman, will vary slightly
That's
based
correct.
on your level of education.
That's correct.
So, you know, it could be a little
Yeah.
more than that, a little less
It could
than
be,
that.
but that's
So
dictated by the
whatever,
school board.
whatever their formula is.
Right, right. Is there a second to that motion?
Second.
second.
Lisa
Oh.
has, Lisa had already seconded.
Okay, she'd already seconded, okay. Got a motion on the floor by Mr. Outlaw, second by Ms. Barnes. Now I'm opening up for questions or discussion on the motion.
Okay,
Mr. Bellfield.
this motion is basically for local supplement for teachers that are funded locally,
No,
for all
sir.
teachers.
It's for all
All
classroom
teachers.
teachers.
all of them.
Yes, sir.
Classroom teachers.
Mr. Bellfield, to try to make it as simple as I can, we, in theory, provide 10% supplement to all classroom teachers.
Yeah.
We are expected, the state, to give those classroom teachers a 3% raise, based on Mr. Horner's statement last week. If indeed they get that 3% raise, we want to keep that supplement the same. So if we don't put some money in there and their salary goes up, their supplement percentage would come down. So we're gonna match whatever that increase is with the same 10% supplement that we're already funding, so so the supplement would still remain at the
Yes.
10%. If they were that, there, Mr. Outlaw pointed out, some teachers are a little bit different depending on education level and many other things, but that's the number we use, that's the common number, is 10% supplement. Questions?
If teacher salaries are $50 million and we're providing $5 million extra for a supplement, and they go up to 51,500,000,
Which would be 3%.
which would be 3%, then we need to go up 3% on our supplement 5 million, which would be 5.15 million. But
But
we
if
think
we
it's more
gonna-
like 6 million is our
Well,
share,
if
so
we're
it's probably
gonna-
60
If we're going to
million.
develop that pattern, that means that we're gonna be increasing supplements every budget year. Well, if they.
The amount,
Yeah.
but not the percentage.
Yeah, but that's what I'm
Yeah,
saying.
yeah.
You're gonna be increasing.
You don't want it to drop down below
Well,
10. You don't want
it's
it-
a
should do
decision that
that.
we
Should
will
do
make
that.
each
That's
year
right.
at
Should do
budget
that.
time.
Right.
Mr. Bellfield. I would think this, from what I know about this board, I would think your statement would be true.
Yeah.
But it don't have to be true.
But we should.
Well, but we
that's-
should, in my opinion, we should.
Well, I'm not convinced.
We should keep the supplement at the same level, and that's what you're doing. If they get an increase from the state, and we don't give them an increase in the supplement, then we're falling behind. We didn't
Well,
keep
Bill,
it,
feel
we
like
didn't
you
keep
made
it
the
at 10.
statement.
It may drop to
Well,
9.5 if they get a raise and we don't increase
The
the supplement.
supplement, you don't have to, you shouldn't have to increase supplement every year.
You're not increasing the percentage, you're
We're
just.
not increasing.
On the percent, even on the percent, if you're gonna go on the percentage, it's gonna require an increase every year.
Did they get a raise from
Only
the
in
state
the
last year?
amount,
Yeah.
percentage
They-
stays the
And we didn't
same.
increase our supplement, so we already fell behind.
No.
Yeah,
I
No,
wonder why
with the
some of them are
percentage.
already tied in.
Well, no, because they,
Supplements are different from their regular statewide salary.
That they are.
if the
Based
supplement,
on their qualifications.
if the supplement, 10% increases and y'all don't give them any more money, they have two options. They can find that increase at 180 from other revenues and apply it towards those supplements, or they can cut the supplement, which would,
They haven't cut the supplement, I promise you that, because we haven't read about it in the paper.
yeah, they haven't. They haven't cut it.
All right, they funded the teachers and they still got the 10% supplement.
Right.
But the money may have come from somewhere else, 'cause last
It's
year,
been used for
we
something else.
balanced our budget because of our decreased total assessed value.
You won't have to read your paper if they cut it, just stay by your phone.
That's right. Ms. Bellfield, you with us?
The
I don't
effect,
mean you
I
agree
see
with
what-
us, I mean you understand what we're
Yeah, I
doing.
see, understand.
the effect of the 180 would be that y'all would be providing them a 3% increase for the supplement, to correspond with the 3% increase they're getting from the state for salaries.
I think we ought to give it to them.
Gotcha. Okay. Any other discussion or?
So, and that's
questions?
basically all we're gonna do as it relates to their request.
I'm just chairing the meeting, Ms. Bellfield. That's the motion I got to deal with currently.
Well, I understand the motion, but I'm saying,
Okay.
but
No, it's
if this
go back to
motion
another
passed,
motion.
it,
Well, I got a motion on-
then the budget is set.
No, we
No,
No, you can make another
I've got a
motion.
motion I'm gonna dispose of right now, and then the floor's back open for any other discussion. Any other questions on the motion? All in favor of the motion as stated, let it be known by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed by a like sign. Motion carries unanimously.
Reluctantly, I voted yes.
All right, I'm gonna stay on item 4, which is budget discussion.
Now you go
Any
back.
other commissioner have anything about the budget of any nature they want to bring up, including schools, community college, or anything else we've covered? This would be the time to do it.
This is the budget for the sheriff's department, is that settled? I mean,
Where we're at.
we are, as far as this board is concerned.
Unless a commission brings up an item, we are right where we were when we left, Southern Bank boardroom that day. He has made an additional presentation in open session after our last, mid-month meeting and our closed session, if you recall, requesting some of those items, but it would take a commissioner to bring it back forward at this point in time, if there's anything, and that's what this time here is for. Anything you wanna bring up about the budget, now's the time to talk about it. Because what we intend to do is leave here, if I understand it, with direction to the board, to the staff of how to finish the budget up. And then we will have another meeting to approve the budget.
The budget is to be presented on the 21st of May, and the first meeting in June, you'll have a public hearing, and you can pass the budget on that day or any day prior to June 30th.
All right, I'm gonna move to the next item, if y'all ready.
Next item is the adjourn.
Next item is item number 5, which is just open discussion for any other item that excuse me, Mr. Bellfield, that'll move beyond.
Actually, I thought we were in item 5.
No, I'm
Bring
still
up
on-
anything we.
I was still on 4, but I'm on 5 now. If there's any item that needs to be brought before the board by commission or staff other than budget, this is the time to do it. Do we have anything? Staff?
No.
Okay. I got one small item I want to mention to the board. I am currently, as chair of the TDA, working with the Travel and Tourism. They have employed a new PR firm, and one of the things they're trying to do is to change their logo and get a new logo. To update you a little bit about Travel and Tourism, they are a board that works under TDA that looks after Barbara Green, that she works with day to day. They are about a 12-member board currently. Most of them are hotelers. They meet monthly. They have several committees, and that's the group that decides how to spend the 2/3 of the money that we collect, or 2% of the hotel tax that we collect. And what they're currently working on is a new logo, and I'm just in the early stages of this because they have kept me involved in selecting this new consultant. I do not get a vote on that board, but they are kind enough to ask me to come and give comments from time to time. They are working on a new logo, and we've met one time already and have not resolved it, but they brought forth this logo right here that they wish to move is what the new consultant has come up with. I've got another meeting today at 4 o'clock, and this is just for the information of the board. I have expressed a concern with this logo, as I did the last logo, and the basis of my concern is along the line that the TDA is a Nash County entity, and I feel like that this does not reflect that it's a Nash County entity, more so and I'm not picking on Rocky Mount. If it were Nashville, if it were Red Oak, it was Dorchester, my comments would all be the same. But I've told them that I just think it's too overbearing with one of our towns, and should be more, I guess, blended, including Nash County. When I look at numerous other places, Johnson County being one of them, the TDA, their logo, basically is along the line of Johnson County. And then it says, Johnson County, Smithville, North
Can you
Carolina. That's what
reverse
it-
that? to
That,
Nash
that,
County
that
and Rocky
appears,
Mount under it?
that would give the impression that Nash County is a part of Rocky Mount, when in fact, Rocky Mount is a part of Nash County.
Just reverse Nash County and Rocky Mount.
I'd invite you to come to the meeting with me today and help and share the slaughter.
What time I need to be there?
What time? It's at 4 o'clock at Russell Proctor's office. But I'm telling you that because it's got sticky enough. I feel like some of the commissioners may hear from members of this group, and I'm in it deep enough that I need a little bit of assurance that the board somewhat agrees with my concern with this. It's all I'm asking for. I'm not asking for a vote, not asked to approve anything. That's a job that I've raised my hand and agreed to do, and I got to do it. But I do need to know that I'm not on a limb by myself, and the board supports me in this.
I only have one
Well, I
question.
can
Mr. Bell,
see why they may have put it that way, and I didn't know nothing about it, haven't talked to anybody.
Sure, and that's why I'm praising the
But,
board.
I guess they were looking at where you're talking about the motel tax, and I guess they were probably had in mind where most of the motels are located.
Not most of them, all of them.
Mhm.
But we don't have a hotel in an area outside of Rocky Mount in Nash County. It's one of their, you're very astute, one of their talking points.
Yeah, well, I haven't talked with any of them.
Sure,
In
I
fact, don't
understand.
even know who's on that.
Oh, okay, yeah.
So.
But as long as everything's running smooth, I
But when
just-
you presented it, that thought
Sure.
immediately came in my mind, that's probably why they're going that way.
Right. Well, as long as things running
That's why they're
smooth.
recommending that.
Right.
Mhm.
Well, the consultant uses the word of uses the lingo of what do people recognize. They recognize Rocky Mount, they don't recognize Nash County. Of course, my point is, this is the time that we might can improve on that.
That's
Yeah.
our fault.
That's our fault.
That's right.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it could be,
Yeah.
but,
How much did they pay that consultant for that? Do you know? Because our staff could have done that.
If you're okay, I'm probably not gonna answer that question.
The school system.
It's kinda like the school board, we approved our budget, they have an advertising budget. We approved the budget last year, and we're meeting, May the 12th, I think it is, to approve our budget for next year. If board has a recommendation
I
on,
don't even like it.
Oh,
Something missing.
well, my comment was, it seems to be awful elementary. But that's for information only, I'm gonna keep working with it, but if you want a further discussion with me, I'll be glad to talk to any of you about it. But if you hear from folks, that's what's going on, and I just felt like you may at some point in time. Any other items to come before the board?
The money in.
Or help me, what day is about the last day of the month, I guess we're gonna adjourn today.
Yes, sir.
All right, Entertain a motion for adjournment at this time.
Move adjourned.
Moved by Mr. Bellfield, second by Ms. Wells. Any questions on the motion? All in favor of the motion, let it be known by saying aye. Any opposed by a like sign.